Welcome to the Heart of Dad podcast. Heart of Dad is a podcast for entrepreneurs who are passionate about their families and business and looking to find more clarity, more balance and more alignment in all areas of their life. Come and join the community at heartofdad.com or on Facebook at groups/Heart of Dad. This week on Heart of Dad, I'm interviewing Igor Furdik. Igor is a divorced and newly married father of two. He's father to an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old, and he's been working for 25 years in the IT sector, despite being only 44 years young, as he says. And he also shares that you can imagine that the divorce brought a lot of challenges in the process of building his relationship with his kids. He says he made a lot of errors along the way, but was able to learn from them. The challenges are, after all, what pushes forward in life. So this week on Heart of Dad, I'm really delighted to introduce Igor Furdik. Have I said it right?
Proper pronunciation, yeah. It's very important to pronounce it properly, otherwise it might be perceived as rude.
Got you. It's great to have you on the show, Igor.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome.
It's a great honor.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a dad.
You're a dad, yeah?
Yeah. I'm a dad. I am 40-something years old, 44, going 45. Yeah, I usually tend to say I am 20 years old with 25th anniversary coming up.
Nicely done.
I started my career as an IT guy studying mathematics, so very rational, very analytical on one hand. On the other hand, I do have quite good ability to connect with people, which enabled me to build up my career as a sort of bridge between the business and the IT. They speak completely different languages. And for me, it's fun, to watch how these communities that need to cooperate are walking, or not different streets, I would say different continents.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my career. I got married relatively early. Well, when I was 26. My firstborn was a daughter. I actually was considering calling her Igor Furdik. There is a long range or long tradition of first heirs to be called Igor in my family.
Okay.
However, in the end, my then ex-wife was able to overvote me, and we called her Teresa, beautiful name. And after 3 years, my second-born was born, and this is the proper Igor Furdik, a boy. Then life happened, I was working in corporation. Things led to one another. I always say, when I would knew what I know now, back then, I would probably never divorce. But yeah, I learned to handle it better than to judge myself for taking the decisions. All in all, I got divorced. It was quite bumpy ride, let's put it like that. On one hand, I had quote unquote freedom. On the other hand, I was not spending as much time with my kids as I used to. And they were, when I moved, my daughter was like 7 and my son was like 4, so it was relatively early. The good thing is I was able to maintain normal relationship with my ex-wife and quite good relationship with my kids. I was the weekend dad, the fun dad. On one hand, on the other hand, I was enjoying the moment, and I tried to pass on the experiences to them as much as possible. During that time, I actually transitioned from being an employee to being self-employed. It's one-person company, consultancy company, and that was also a source of little bit of stress. And sorry, I'm mixing a lot of topics because it's packing 10 years of my life into a couple of minutes. So as I divorced, I transitioned to self-employed. I was not that good with the finance, and I got into some debt. And while still having the opportunity, to have interesting engagement in work or for different clients, and still maintaining the relationship with my kids, I was with them every second weekend and every Wednesday, and they were enjoying that. And I was enjoying that the time that we spent together. And I came to learn in my own experience the proverb that is being said here in Slovakia. Little kids, little problems; big kids, big problems. Now I'm just smiling when my colleagues or friends are complaining, "Oh my God, my 5-year-old kids are fighting." I was like, no, you don't know what an issue is until your kids are growing up. So go ahead.
Thank you for sharing that story. And as you say, you're kind of trying to compress 10 years of life into 2 minutes. And it's always interesting what comes up in that. So I heard you say it was bumpy after the divorce, but you remain friends with your wife. Are you willing to share a bit more? Like what was bumpy for you in that period?
I am a man for whom the family is the most important. The kids were the most important. So I left them the flat. I was paying the mortgage, so I was still bearing the brunt of the costs, which was more or less okay because I was employed in a multinational corporation. I was able to cover that. But when I switched to self-employed, this created a financial issues, But all in all, it's a learning process. So this was the financial side of the bumpy thing. The other thing was I was the one that walked away, and this bears always here in Slovakia the sign of being the one that is guilty for the divorce. And my ex-wife, she took quite a lot of effort to spread the word around. The good thing about myself is I tend not to take things personally. So I was like, I understand that, And I think through compassion, I was able to maintain the relationship and being able to talk, because I know of a couple of my friends who get divorced, and they are, whenever I ask them about their ex-wives, it's like, that nasty person, that nasty person, she did such and such and so and stuff like that. And I said, for me, the framework that occurred, I spent with the person 11 years, It didn't work out in the end, but I would not spend 11 years or whatever amount of years with a person with whom I didn't click, So the bumpy, another aspect was this shaming. It was not that bad, but there was a portion of that. Especially my mother took it very personally. You know what your son did? And she's like, no. And blah, 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 blah. And she was like, oh my God. And she called me and said, come on, mother. She's heard, and of course she's trying to make her world click together, you know. And so that's another. And the third thing is, yes, I was a fun dad. However, I did not have the opportunity to spend every night with the kids, you know. And this takes away from the ability to provide the basis foundation for the kids to grow up, you know, which I did my best to provide them during the time that we spent together.
What was the impact on you, Igor, of that? You know, you said family was the most important thing to you a little bit earlier, and so you're in this situation where, you know, you decide to leave the relationship. There are consequences, you know, financial. There are consequences in terms of, you know, your ex-wife spreading rumors about you, and you know, you stay in your compassion, but your relationship with your kids, you know, you can't put them to bed every night. You can't kiss them goodnight every night. You know, how did you live that?
To some extent, I did understand already back then that I do create my own reality. And when I'm not with them, I can spin stories in my head, you know. Oh my God, I'm not putting them to bed and stuff like that. However, it wouldn't help anyone, least of people. It would not help me. It would hurt me. So I sort of split my world, you know. When I was with the kids, I was with the kids. When I was not with the kids, I was either working or partying. Yeah. And yeah, one thing that is, I think, a natural temptation when I'm a weekend dad, you know, is to allow the kids everything. And I think that's not the smartest choice, let's put it like that. So I always try to lead the kids to at least some sort of self-sufficiency, to ability to cater for themselves, you know. One of the stories that I share with friends is, it was relatively early in the divorce. My son was, I don't know, 6 or 5. My daughter was 8 or 9. And we went for a walk in the city, and they wanted to go for a tea into a tea room. I said, okay, let's go. They were standing, so where do we go? And I said, you'll find out. No, we're shy. I said, okay, then we'll stand here. And yeah, we stood there like for 10 minutes until the kids gradually understood that, yeah, I mean that. And they actually started talking to the bypassers. And when they found out after, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes that we were standing next to the tea room, they were yeah, a bit upset. But the biggest return on this story was my son 2 years ago or a year ago approached me and he said, Daddy, you remember the tea room story? I said, yeah, I do. Today I had a discussion with my friend in school, and he was supposed to go to the teacher's room. He was like so shy that he was, no, I cannot go there. And I did tell my friend, what are you afraid of? Let's do that. And then he said, thank you, Daddy, for getting me through this.
Beautiful.
You know, yeah.
It's amazing. We just don't know. I mean, you know, you had a very clear idea in mind when you did that with your kids, but you never know how it's going to land with them. And
exactly.
For him to come back with that later was beautiful.
The thing. Yes, I do not know how it's going to land. However, what I think was important for me is the consistency. Not that I'm the most consistent person in the world, but kids are listening. and it's true not only about kids, it's true about colleagues, about friends, and they're testing the frontiers. If I tell my kids this is how it's going to be, they will test it if I really mean that.
Mm.
And only gradually they will understand, yeah, that I really do mean that. So this is I think the pitfall that we as divorced dads can fall into, being the nice person that gives them everything, and in case we give them or I give them order and then I do not follow through, it's not a wise choice. Let's put it like that.
Mm. To what extent did you discuss with your ex-wife how your kids were going to be brought up as co-parenting but divorced?
Actually, we did not have such a discussion. When there were a couple of when there were big decisions to be made, my wife approached me and we discussed that. About the parenting, there was an incident a couple of years ago with my daughter when she entered the puberty, and I'm coming back to the proverb: little kids, little problems, and big kids, big problems. And she found a boyfriend, and we're the worst people in the world. She didn't want to spend time with me, which I took personally. Not the wisest choice, but yeah, it was as it was. And then she ran away from my wife, and I had a gist where the reason I'm telling the story is to give you the answer to a question: how we brought it, how we synchronized on bringing kids up. This was crisis management, and together we sort of I found her. I brought her back to home, and this did repeat a couple of times. And this was perhaps the biggest thing that I sort of could have done differently, let's put it like that. I snapped and I lashed out at my daughter, and she called me names, and I leashed out, and for a year she did not talk to me, my daughter. So I was communicating through my ex with about the status or how is she doing, stuff like that.
So how old was she then, Igor, when she broke off contact with you?
14 or 15. 14 coming 15.
And what was the impact on you of her shutting you out of her life in that way?
Back then I was already into the 3 principles, and there was the usual rant. I should have known better, and yada, 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 yada. And I said, look, it is as it is. The good thing is that my son was still with me, and my daughter was not behaving rationally back then, and he saw that. So I was coping with that, accepting her choice not to talk to me. I called her like once for 3 months or for a couple of minutes and stuff like that. However, somehow I knew that it will resolve itself,
Mm-hmm.
And actually, after a year or so of the silence, somehow it occurred to me that she likes to communicate via the meme pictures. Small thing,
Mm-hmm.
These kids these days, they are all communicating by Instagram and stuff like that. And it occurred to me. So gradually we started communicating via the meme pictures. And now 3 years later, the situation is much better, So she's 18 years old. She has her boyfriend and friends and stuff like that. So it's not like she's with me the whole weekend. But she's actually eager to meet up with me and my son and do something. For instance, she's learning. Uh, she's making her driver's license, so I did provide her a couple of practical lessons in driving, and she enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, to wrap it up, basically, somehow I knew that it will be good, or it will become better, And I was not pushing, because usually when you push, people are not that much keen on opening if you are pushing them into something that they clearly don't want. So I just let her go and still maintain the space that I'm her father, and if there's anything, she can always come to me. And I enjoyed every moment that we spent time together. Yeah.
Mm. Such a beautiful story. And I think for other dads who are listening who have been through a process of estrangement with their kids, I think there'll be a lot of hope in your story, Igor, because there's that sense of creating a space and opening up to let her come back, and then that insight that, well, memes might be a way to start a dialogue. I mean, that's just beautiful. Such a great story. I love it.
Thank you.
I mean, just to change direction a little bit, one of the things I've been asking dads who are also business owners and entrepreneurs is, something about loneliness. And I wanted to know if you have any experience of, particularly as you're a solopreneur. I know you work within businesses, and you talked about being that bridge. But have you had that experience at all of the loneliness of having your own business?
Not really, because what I do is I am a project manager, delivery manager, change manager, coach, basically working with people, helping organization achieving their goals. So my daily work is working with people. So actually, when I have a peaceful time at the end of the day, I actually enjoy it. There were, especially during the bumpy period, it did occur to me that, I'm lonely, and I did, as I said, the partying and the trying to find something that I thought I was missing. But in the end, I settled now. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, in those early years, I know when I've been in that position of starting up something that you can feel a pressure to just take whatever work is around to make sure that you meet your financial commitments, and that things can go out of balance quite easily when that happens. But, because I certainly found myself in a position of saying yes a lot, when sometimes yes wasn't always in the bigger picture the healthiest thing for me. And I wondered if you had any experience of that, as you were saying.
I actually, given the fact that I'm in the IT business, which is objectively, the business area which has quite a lot of money, whenever I took a new engagement, I was able to make positive story out of it for myself. However, where I struggled is when I was too long on an engagement. Usually it's longer projects, saying no to the thing that is currently in front of me and being open for something new. That was the most challenging part, So for instance, I was at an engagement which was, we delivered the project. It was 2 years of intense work. And then it went into the business as usual mode, operations,
Mm-hmm.
very quiet. And I got bored, let's put it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I struggled to say, yeah, this is not for me. In the end, I was able to say no. In the end, I was able to say no to the current engagement was played correctly. I did the handover and everything. That's, I think, the most important thing, to have a correct or proper business or any relationship. So we split normally, and now I'm working at a company, and I have different project every year or something like that. What is a big what was a big challenge for me is I'm doing the coaching as part of the business that I do in the project management, delivery management, blah 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 blah. However, there is a side of me that wants to do this more with more focus. Let's put it like that. So quite recently, I was putting together a workshop around 3 principles and implications of the 3 principles in life, in business, because this is something that's the most obvious for me. And this was a struggle. This was a struggle because I kept on creating stories for myself, and I won't be able to do that, and maybe it's not worth it. What if people say no and stuff like that? Thank God I have my own coach who helped me to see through the misunderstandings that I had. Nothing is as hard as the stories that we spin around the topic.
So true.
Yeah. So this was a learning experience for me, and actually it did go through quite well. I'm sorry I'm not answering your questions to the letter, but yeah.
No, this is great. There's no, I have no prescribed formula, Igor. You're doing well. Big thumbs up.
Let me switch on the light. So yeah, and
so what I hear you saying is that you've had some lessons where you've fallen into a business as usual project and got bored, but now it sounds like you're creating more of the environment and the within your work situation, the environment that challenges you and gives you more fulfillment. Is that right?
Yeah, it's quite right. One thing occurred to me while you were talking, and I think it's helping me both in the relationship with my kids, for instance, the incident with my daughter, and quote unquote challenging situation in the work. And the truth that I see is that every single person is doing the best they can given the state of mind they're in. This was true for my daughter when she was having a feeling that I was taking her away from her beloved boyfriend and trying to limit her and stuff like that. And it's same about the manager that is angry and provides unreasonable requests. It's same about the colleague or person from another department who says, no, this cannot be done. This is too difficult. But just by understanding that they're doing the best they can at the moment, it gives me the space to find the proper solution. Sometimes it might be, as in case with my daughter, to just keep the space open or wait, or in case of a deadline where there is a time constraint, it might be seeing behind the words. So for instance, in case there is an unreasonable request, I want to have the system built in 2 weeks time. which is not doable. And if I spin the story, yeah, this is a stupid request, stupid manager, whatnot, it blocks me from actually understanding what's behind the request.
Mm.
And in 100% of the cases, in case I'm able to keep my head clear, I'm able to get to the bottom of the what needs to be done or what the person wants to achieve.
It's a great bit of wisdom for life in general, whether it's parenting or business. I love that.
It's all connected, because we tend to say family life and business life. I always say, it doesn't matter. It's all like kindergarten, whether it's business, whether it's family. People are testing the boundaries. People are trying to build relationship, destroy relationship. It's just slightly different clothes they are wearing.
I like that analogy.
But the underlying dynamics is, I think, the same.
Well, I mean, just sort of circling back in a slightly different direction, and I'll come back to what you just saying, because I think it's beautiful. But just wondering about when you're a weekend dad, and maybe you haven't said this exactly, Igor, but I wonder if there's a pressure, to be fun dad.
That's an excellent question. Yeah, of course there is. And especially when the kids were smaller, and this is something I could have done differently, but nevertheless it happened. Because I was the fun dad, I set the expectation, we come to daddy and we will have fun. How many fun trips can you imagine during the year? Certainly not 28, which is the number of whatever is the half of the weeks in the year. Don't get me wrong, there were multiple occasions of very fun things that we did together. We're doing urban exploring and stuff like that. However, gradually I came to realize, it was like 4 years ago, in case you're bored, just say what you want to do. I will do that. But you are in the driver's seat. Again, it's about empowering the kids to make their own choice.
Well, I mean, I think that's brilliant. And you've shared a couple of examples where you've kind of been really empowering for your kids. I just wanted to dive into a slightly different area, which is, I was thinking when you were talking about the pressure to be a fun dad, and you sort of moved away from that. But how did that sit with? Were there any feelings of guilt about the time that you weren't with them? We haven't really spoken about that. I'm sort of curious to know a little bit more about how it was for you, and that you were working hard, you were partying, you had the kids at the weekend. You talked about that sort of separation you made, compartmentalizing in a way. But I wondered if there were feelings of guilt at that time that came through.
Guilt is a feeling. I'm trying to lay out the foundation. Guilt is a feeling of regretting something that I should have done differently.
Yeah, or it's a narrative or a story.
The reason I'm saying this, I actually had a conversation a week earlier exactly about the guilt and regrets. And I used to have this A lot, a lot. You know, I should have done this, I should have done that. Something happened when I was 25, when it just occurred to me that beating myself up about something I have done or I have not done is the most unproductive thing I could do. And it receded immensely, you know. So yeah, from time to time it occurs to me, yeah, I probably shouldn't have been so rash with my daughter. Somehow I'm able to let that go very quickly because I see that as really unproductive,
Mm.
slippery slope that will not lead me anywhere but a abyss of despair. So yes, I am getting things of guilt or regret, but I just do not let myself into these feelings, you know.
I
So
love
unfortunately, I do not have a how to other than just seeing the guilt as a story that I would spin in my head. There are some stories that I do spin, for instance, I smoke, and I was very effective in fighting that by beating myself up. The good thing is I stopped beating myself up. However, I still smoke. You know, it's still not ideal, but I'm making the best out of the
Yeah,
situation.
yeah. I think that's such a great piece of wisdom you shared there. It's interesting talking to lots of dads about guilt, and some of my guests are people who are in the same community as we are in the Three Principles community and
Mm-hmm.
have a very different
Mm-hmm.
relationship with guilt from those who aren't,
Mm-hmm.
maybe because they've seen, perhaps what you've seen. But it was interesting, you saw that years before you came into the understanding of the Three Principles, that you had an insight in your mid-20s that this was an
Mm-hmm.
incredibly unproductive way to spend your time, and would only lead, I love your description, to an abyss of despair. I think
Yeah.
a lot of us could recognize that in what you're sharing. Just another
The
direction.
thing is,
Go on, go for it.
you know, the thing is, it's an insight I did not choose. It chose me, you know.
Mm, mm,
And yeah, I was lucky that it occurred to me so early in my life. But yeah, as you said, you know, the community about Three Principles, we tend to be much more open for the insights and new ideas,
mm,
being able to see through our thoughts for what they really are, you know,
mm,
just thoughts, which we can either hold on to or just let them go.
mm. Yeah, I love that example of that. Just a different direction I wanted to go in for a moment or two, which was to ask you about your own father and what,
We're opening the Pandora's box.
um,
Actually, my father is the exception from the principles.
of course, of course. There always has to be one, and it
he
has
is
to be
responsible. He is responsible for a feeling of guilt and regret that I feel in my life.
that. So yeah,
With
so
regard,
I'm
with
kind of curious
regard
to know
to
about kind of. Sorry, Igor, I cut across you. Say again.
with regards to my father and my mother, you know, we travel the world together. We are three siblings, three sons, and we traveled with them throughout the Eastern Europe in different countries for long periods of time. And my father was always, you know, this patriarch of the family, whose word was not to be questioned. And he was actually a person who could flip me with a single word. And it occurred on multiple occasions. And for instance, when I divorced and moved out, actually he offered that I could live in the house of my parents, which is a huge house with 3 floors or something like that. And I said yes, and then I said no. I would rather pay 500 or 550 euros for rent just to have feeling of freedom.
Mm.
So that's why I said, this is my father is an exception to principles. He is responsible for my feelings. And however, in the recent months, I started to see him as a human being. It's a process. It's not a switch, at least not for me. And I do feel a bit more compassion. So that's my story about my father. And now, in case you're curious about different aspects, please ask away.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on something there, and one thing I've been exploring for myself then is how, to what extent was your father a blueprint or an anti-blueprint for you being a dad?
Short or long answer?
Well, we've got a bit of time still.
Okay. The funny thing with fathers is I, of course, am claiming that everything my father does is incorrect, and I will know better. And he did the same to his father. And we gradually saw my father becoming his father. And I'm able to observe the similar process in myself. So yes, this is a blueprint, which I tend to turn my blind eye to, of course, I'm not like him. On the other hand, yeah, there are features of myself that are similar to my father. For instance, when I'm back at home, I prefer to be alone. He's very particular about that, On the other hand, when I was smaller, he always shared stories about how he went for hiking and did this and that. However, because he was working so hard, he never spent too much time with us, And this is perhaps some anti-pattern that I tried to switch in my kids, and that's why I was pushing so hard to be a fun dad, But coming to the template or pattern question, it's still a pattern. Whether I try to move away from it or move towards it, it's still something that is in my life, So yes, I'm copying the behaviors of my father, and where I do see the room for improvement, for instance, like with spending some quality time with my kids and providing a bit more support to them, I do the adjustment. But I think there is no point in denying the fact, yeah, I'm not like my father. Come on. I dare every man who spent at least some time with his father to say, I'm not like my father. I'm pretty sure that there are features that you took from your father, either wittingly or unwittingly. What you can do about that is to take the best out of it.
Yeah, beautifully said. And what are you seeing emerge in your relationship with your son then? You talked quite a lot about your daughter today, a little bit about your son. How old is he now, Igor?
He is 15. The relationship with my son is I support him, and provide him feedback to his wife, for instance, when he's fighting with his friend in the school, I try to provide a different perspective, and I always talk to him like to a person who is able to form his opinion, his own opinion. I do not see too much sense in talking to kids like they're completely kids that they have no idea about anything. So for instance, when he was like, I don't know, 5, 6 years old, we're discussing black holes and solar system and germs and stuff like that. Interesting things about the world, psychology. And we expanded the topics that he was interested in. So the good thing about my relationship with my son is that basically for 3 years we're spending weekends together. Every second weekend, more or less. It's our time, and we can make anything out of it. Sometimes it's more active, sometimes it's less active, but yeah.
I really like, you were saying how your relationship with those weekends and therefore your children has shifted over the years. It sounds like that pressure came off, to be fun dad, but just to engage with your kids in a more, leaving them to be more independent about their choices. But it also took the pressure off you at the same time.
Exactly. It's win-win, right? They get to do what they prefer to do because in case I would impose my opinion to the kids, we should do this, we should do that, they could start judging their own ideas or insights that are coming into them.
Right.
By keeping the space open, we might get to quite interesting topics. So I said, last weekend we were driving in the car, and it just occurred. I didn't plan for it. It just occurred. By the way, it was not on the street. It was on a remote parking lot without any access for pedestrians or other cars.
Well said. Well said. And that's
kind of legal disclaimer. So
yeah. Very good. Yeah, so I can see it's kind of just like a creative moment, isn't it, where you see something occurs that you might do together. Well, another question I had for you, Igor, was like, to what extent have you involved your kids in your business and understanding what you do in your professional life and how that how it's evolved?
That's a very good question. It started 4 or 5 years ago when they were like, "What do you do?" I said, "I work with people." Because it's very hard to explain project management, delivery management to a teenager, a young teenager. However, gradually, for instance, when on a couple of occasions during the weekends that we were supposed to be together, I had to work, so they had to listen to the phone conversations, and they were like, "Oh, really?" So this is how they absorbed what I do. I did not involve them in my business per se. What I did try is to spread 3 principles. And you know how it goes. Actually, I tried to do multiple approaches because I do see the shift that it enabled within myself. So I tried preaching, this is how it is. And they were like closing doors, closing shutters on the windows and everything. So gradually I learned to try to provide a different perspective on misunderstanding of the thought in the moment. There's still some resistance. I think it was half a year ago when I tried to explain the three principles to my son for 2 hours. After 2 hours, he said, "I think I'm starting to grasp that, but you sound like a Jehovah's Witness." To wrap up my answer, I tried to involve them in the three principles through multiple techniques, or methods, and then I understood that the best that I can is really just providing the best example I can and being human.
I think that's so true.
I also do it. I also do it from time to time. I have to be a superhuman. I do not do mistakes. Kids pick up on that.
Yeah.
In case I'm able to genuinely admit to the fact that yes, I did mistakes, it actually increases the quality of the relationship, not deteriorates. And I'm not saying that the technique is really being genuine, not playing either a superhuman or poor me person,
Exactly. Beautiful. I think it's great that you sort of brought that in at the end, because I think when we have strong views or beliefs or even an understanding that we want to share across it's very tempting to want to bring it into the family life. And like you have had those moments of shutting doors and windows shutting closed, and I think the best way is just to live your life as you are and trust that it will.
People get curious.
Yeah.
Because what this understanding gives me is the ability to go through quote unquote stressful situations and difficult situations with relative ease.
Yeah.
And it raises eyebrows, opens conversations. And this is the proper way, not push, but pull.
Pull, exactly. Well, Igor, it's been fantastic talking to you. I've really enjoyed it. Lots of smiles, lots of wisdom, some great stories and honesty. Thank you so much for spending time on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having the opportunity.
You're very welcome. And if people want to find out more about you, where can they do that?
I'm actually old person. I do not have presence on the web. In case they want to look me up, I do have Facebook profile or LinkedIn profile, or just drop me an email on igor.furdik@gmail.com, and I can reach out back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.